I hope everyone had a wonderful Shabbos. Now we can learn Chasidus. And just to refresh ourselves, in the last keta, in the last paragraph, we spoke about the special virtue of the nefesh hasichlis, of the human rational soul, which is the benefit is the idea of seichel, of logic and intelligence, which can discern between something that's healthy and something that is unhealthy. Okay? Let's continue. V'hinei, this is 276, Ois Daled. V'hinei al yedei emtzoi shel nefesh shel sichlis, through the intermediary. Emtza means the middle. Through the middleman, the middle soul, shel nefesh hasichlis, of this human rational drive, hinei ha-nefesh elikis, mevayer u'masbir la-nefesh haba mis-hasogas elikis. The nefesh elikis, the godly soul, explains to the nefesh habamis godly ideas. You need a middleman, you need a broker. Many times we want to go straight. We want to sell a property, for example, ourselves. Well, in the long run, you lose, even though you might avoid a commission. But there is something to the art of negotiating. There's something to the art of being a middle person. And the same is true for a shidduch, which, by the way, the Rebbe was very much for having a shadchan, using a shadchan, not to do it yourselves, between the parents, or other means, because the middleman is able to speak the language of the two parties and bring them together. So too, the nefesh hasichlis is able to speak the language of both the nefesh elokis and the nefesh habamis. How? Because the nefesh hasichlis understands what the nefesh elokis wants. It's not godliness, but seichel logic understands there's something more than just eating and sleeping and indulging. And at the same time, it understands that you need to eat and sleep to function. So it brings them together. That's why he says the nefesh hasichlis is the emtzoi, the intermediary that brings the two together. And this is also an important lesson, that those that are able to be middlemen to bring people together, it's a very special talent, a very special gift, and a necessary one. You know, in many shuls you have, like they call them a Rosh HaKol, the head of the congregation, or a Gabbai, or a president, someone who's able to bridge the gap between what the congregation wants and what the rabbi wants, or what the leadership wants. And sometimes it can be a very heated issue, you know, and it can easily spin out of control. And someone who is strong in the area of the art of negotiating will be matzliach, will succeed in bringing the two sides together. So that's all an example of this idea with our own nefesh hasichlis. Our nefesh habamis, Moshe, wants to just rage like a bull and indulge like a pig. So you got to get someone to say, you're not an animal. You're a human being. And I understand you have needs. So let's see how we could work out those needs that are healthy. And the nefesh elokis, on the other hand, says, I want the nefesh habamis to be only godly and to only look for Hashem in everything and be godly. And you're right, but you got to give the nefesh habamis some leadway, because it's not accustomed to that type of lifestyle. So the seichel plays a dominant role in bringing the two worlds together. And this is a reason. One second. And this is a reason why at times we don't succeed in synthesizing the nefesh alikis and the nefesh abamis, because we're not adequately using our nefesh asichlis. So basically, what I'm saying now supports and demands a thoughtfulness given to every issue, from your own avodah, your own issues, to your family issues, to community issues. And this is something that even if you're not strong in negotiating, and not everyone is, in fact, most people are not, nevertheless, if you take the time to be thoughtful, you'll calm yourself down, and you'll see that there is another way of looking at the same thing that you think is outrageous or is gewaldic. And then, with thoughtfulness, you will hopefully make the right decision. Yes, Baruch?
Sorry for interrupting. I used to work in telesales. So a lot of people were making a sale by manipulating the customer. In other words, they used the intellect in order to do that. So being that the Nefesh Bahamis is mostly driven by its ikka thing, its ikka property is the midas. How does that work? How does manipulation work?
Well, again, there you could call it manipulation, or you could call it he's doing his job. Is a car salesman a manipulator, or is the category of a car salesman selling cars and using ploys of sales to accomplish the sale of cars? So to begin with, when you go to a car, one second. To begin with, when you go to a car salesman, you have to know that you're going to a car salesman. So it's not manipulation. Yes, if you don't know you're going to a car salesman and you think you're going to a tzaddik, then you feel very manipulated, or you feel that he's ripping you off. So frankly, in that case, you're at fault because you are either foolish or not knowledgeable and didn't do your homework to know the ground rules of a car salesman. But if you know the ground rules of a car salesman, that it's all about sales and whatever sales entails, then you're prepared. And you either go to that venue or you don't go to that venue. Or you go to the venue and you tell him, hey guy, I know that you're trying to rip me off here. So tell me, I'll let you rip me off, but how much are you going to rip me off? You know what I'm saying? So the same is with in your work in telesales, and the same thing. And by the way, this issue has to do with halachic issue with is it considered genevas das? As a halacha, you're not allowed to steal someone's mind. You're not allowed to deceive them, right? It's called genevas das. So is being a car salesman and trying to sell a lemon to someone genevas das? This is an issue that is spoken about in the latter collected responses from different rabbis and rabbonim, because it could quite well be it's not, because to begin with you need to know that this is the field, so you're already pre-warned, you know already. And if you don't know, you're a fool, or you just don't know. I mean, I'm just saying, so when does Gnevas Das apply? When you honestly were told and understand that this particular issue is honest, and then that person or that thing fools you and deceives you, that's Gnevas Das. I'm not making a halachic ruling. Again, I'm sure there are rabbis that disagree and they say it is Gnevas Das, and maybe majority say that. So please don't walk away saying that I said it's not Gnevas Das. I'm not saying that. All I'm saying is that you have to be on top of what the issue is. And this is exactly where seichel is so important. It's exactly where, the Rebbe, at times people in business would write to the Rebbe for business advice, and he sent him to a very specific person or two to give them that advice. And we know some of the people that he would send people to, and they were very, very astute. Whether they were very knowledgeable in Torah or not. I know one of them who the Rebbe would send to, who was a genius in Torah. But the Rebbe sent the person, the business person, to him because he had a very, we say in Yiddish, a klare kop. He had a clear mind. He had an unadulterated, he could think clearly and straight, not, That's another type of a mind. And sometimes you need that if you're going into a court case and you want to, you want to win and you want to try to, to turn things upside down. You need someone who can go back and forth upside down and make the person who's sitting in judgment not know where his head's spinning and rule in your favor. There are such people too. So every field requires, that's the idea, but the Rebbe says, Moshe Bayes, the Rebbe says, go to Yedidim Umevinim. When it came to business, the Rebbe had a general policy. Open, as a general klal, go to Yedidim, friends, Mevinim, who are mavens. In other words, you don't go for business advice to a doctor and a lawyer and a rabbi. You go to them for other things. For business, you go to someone who is a maven in business and who's a friend, so that the person means your best. Okay? So going back, so there's one type of person that Rebbe sent was very, very knowledgeable in Torah, but the Rebbe sent the person with the business issue to him to get clear advice, to hear the issue, even though he was a rabbi, he wasn't a businessman. You understand what I'm saying?
Sure. But
in that case, he was so astute and so clear. And then I know someone else who the Rebbe sent to, he said he didn't have parnosa. So the Rebbe told him to go to a certain person. And the person was a very simple person. Very simple person. I knew the person. I spent time with this person. He had he had a great heart. And, he was a great man. But, and he told this person who didn't have business, he said he should go into the shoe business. And he said to him, everyone needs shoes. This person knew nothing about the shoe business. He had knowledge in plumbing. And he didn't listen. And the rest of his life, he had lots of issues. I'll just leave it at that.
Sure.
So,
sorry, I didn't mean to sidetrack.
What?
I didn't mean to sidetrack.
Okay. I know, but no. But it's an important issue when we talk about nefesh hasichlis. It's very important to understand practically what that means. So you only helped us clarify the issue of seichel being a memutza. It's a very important point. A good therapist. A good therapist is someone who has that seichel to be able to listen to both sides and bring them together, if possible. And even if not possible, to depart respectfully, seichel, and it's not an easy thing, because when something is really, bothering you, you're very emotional. The emotions take over, and you lose sight of seichel, and it's very hard to have it. So by going to a third party, going to the nefesh hasichlis, who's impartial. This is the point. The nefesh hasichlis is impartial to both nefesh elikis and the nefesh abamis. So it says, listen, I'll be willing to bring peace between you, but I'm not vested in this. I only have one thing I want to accomplish. I want to synthesize you and see how you could be a more godly person living in the physical world. So let's continue. And he says, he explains some of what I just said orally. Since the nefesh hasichlis,
Rabbi, which page? Rabbi,
276, ois dalit, the fourth paragraph, which begins at the bottom, the second line. The hine nefesh hasichlis, the intellectual soul, liyoisa tivis, since it's natural to man, yesh lo keruv la nefesh habami, so it has a kiruv, it has a closeness to the animal soul. The nefesh habamis, and the animal soul, Im Hayois, top of 277. Do we have that page? Did Moshe send you page 277?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah, we got it.
Yeah, okay. The Nefesh Habamis Im Hayesoi Mikusheres Im Hayetzahara. The Nefesh Habamis, although it's connected to the Yetzahara, the Yetzahara has a real strong place in the Nefesh Habamis. Mikol Mokim, nevertheless, Hini HaNefesh HaSichlis Payeles Ba, the intellectual soul impacts it. Lahafrida Mehayetzer Hara, to separate it from the Yetzer Hara, the Koletes Havona Sichlis, and it's able to absorb the intellectual idea. This goes back to what we learned several shiurim ago, that the Nefesh Habamis does not equal Yetzer Hara, right? So this is what he says. The Nefesh HaSichlis can at least impact the Nefesh Habamis to separate it from the Yetzer Hara and say to the Nefesh Habamis, you are not Yetzer Hara, you are the power of passion, and Yetzer Hara is already an inclination of evil, and you're not that. You tend to gravitate towards that, but you're not that. And therefore, at that time, when the Nefesh HaSichlis does that, the Nefesh Habamis is koiletes, it absorbs Havana Sichlis, the intellectual idea that's presented to it to be more of a mensch. And since we established that the modus operandi, the essence of the Nefesh HaSichlis is seichel, is intellect, hagam shehu seichel tivi, although it's not godly seichel, it's human seichel. This makes another important point. Can a broker, a negotiator make a mistake? Absolutely. It's not as though, as much as I discussed the virtue of being a negotiator and a broker and all that, you can make a mistake. Why? Because seichel is tivi. Seichel is natural. Seichel is not kodesh, holy. Only kedusha is beyond mistakes. You hear that? Anything else outside of kedusha is open to mistakes. This is what he says. Hagam shu seichel tivi. Although seichel is natural, and since it's natural, it lends itself to mistakes. Omnam liyos dechlolis mina seichel liyosdim shechla mashal amaylam seichel mimenu. Nevertheless, he says, the fact is that seichel tends to strive upward to what's above it, what's greater than itself, right? Seichel doesn't limit you to seichel. It limits you to seichel, but at the same time, it understands there's something beyond rationale and intelligence that I don't get, but I know it's there. Hine. This itself, you hear this? Listen to this. This itself, that the Nefesh HaSichlis, the human rational soul, the drive, is aware that there's something above itself, that itself makes it kli, a vessel, lekabel eza skole ma'aseichel umidas the Nefesh HaLikis. The Nefesh HaLikis is godliness. How can the Nefesh HaSichlis, which is natural phenomenon, be a vessel for godliness? Again, it seems like it's rochok min mizrach l'mayrev. It's distant, like from the east to the west. Says the Rebbe, it's true. But the very fact that it can acknowledge, I don't have the answers, and there's something greater than me, that is the tool and receptivity for the godly spark and the godly message. I don't know if, in other words, I'll say it this way. The bittul of seichel, the humility, not that seichel has, not the strength of seichel, but the weakness of seichel, that seichel realizes it's limited, that itself is the tool to receive a godly message. Because godliness rests in one place. We learn in Tanya and all over, in Bittul. Right? The place, where is the seat of godliness? Where do you see a godly person? In a humble person. In a haughty person, there's no godliness. Or at least it's not apparent. Right? But in a humble person, so Bittul is the vessel. So when we talk about the Nefesh Elikis, that's godliness. And we talk about the Nefesh HaSichlis, which is Teva, nature, rationale, the mind. Seemingly it's a contradiction. Says the Rebbe, that aspect of Seichel is a contradiction. But the aspect that Seichel is able to say, I recognize there's something greater than myself, that aspect in Seichel, Yonason, is a vessel for godliness. So we normally think of Seichel as being proactive. We don't think of Seichel as being humble in the sense that, hey, I don't have all the answers, and I know there's something greater that does have the answers, i.e., emunah, faith. Now, this is not an automatic. This idea for Seichel to acknowledge that I don't have all the answers is not at all a given. You know why? Because so many people and so many of us, we are so driven by Seichel that we think Seichel has all the answers. And if I can't find an answer in Seichel, I don't believe it. I don't trust it. It doesn't exist. That was the whole sheet of communism. And even in our society, the early philosophers like Aristotle and others, that was their position, that if it can be proven intellectually, it exists and it's real. If not, it doesn't. And from there, they spoke about the immortality of the soul, and they disagreed with it, right? That the Torah says the neshamas is everlasting. And they say no. Because they said the soul, whatever that is only there as long as the body is there. All of that comes from the perspective that Seichel, you have to be able to support it with Seichel. If you can't, it's not emes. And this is a very important nakuda that makes Torah different than other religions, and more specifically, more than the humanistic approach. The whole humanistic approach to life and to godliness is based on Seichel. And if you can't support it, I'll be Seichel, it's not true. That means that type of Seichel is lacking what? Is lacking Bittul. Here he says, when is the Nefesh HaSichlis a keli for the Nefesh Elikis? When it has the Bittul, when it has the humility. And what's the humility? It says, I don't have the answer. I've thought about it and studied about it, and I realize I just don't get it, but I know there is an answer. See, the conclusion of Seichel is where there's the difference whether your Seichel is a godly Seichel or a humanistic Seichel. And what's the conclusion? The conclusion is, do I conclude I don't understand, there must be an answer to something greater than myself, greater than my Seichel? Or the answer is, or the conclusion is, if I can't understand it, it doesn't exist. It's not true. Just last night I had a conversation, late at night on the WhatsApp with a rabbi, a Litvak rabbi. We were going back and forth. I told him certain things that I, heard this week from interviewing various people, and he was refuting everything. So I wrote to him, I said to him, how could you refute it? You weren't there. You weren't there. And the person was there. He says, oh, well, but the person was only 17 when it was, so he's thinking of it as a teenager. All kinds of refutations. And I wrote to him, I said, I'm sorry, your argument will not hold up in a court because you're telling me maybe, and maybe, and maybe. And I'm telling you, the person says, I was there, I saw it with my own eyes. What, was he drunk? What was he, stupid? A 17-year-old is not a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old. But that's seichel. That's exactly, I went through the experience last night at 1 a.m. Everything was about seichel. And you have people who do this constantly, that they poo-poo what you present to them and use logic, and and the sharper the mind and the better the brain, the more you can argue. And by the way, there's a time for this type of argumentation. In halacha and hilchos choshen mishpat, when it comes to monetary law, something called a toyin. You know what a toyin is? A toyin is someone who is, what's the word in English for a toyin?
It's not a lawyer, it's like a caseworker.
Huh? A what?
It's like, no,
he defends you and he argues for you.
Yeah, like an advocate.
An advocate. Yeah, an advocate. So, halacha says that when you go to a din Torah, especially when it comes to mumminus, to monetary issues, you're allowed to have a toyin. And it becomes a whole issue. Who should be the toyin? But you're allowed to have a toyin. I know here, and maybe it's this way in Eretz Yisrael too, probably it is, but here, people pay big bucks for getting a good toyin. A lot of money. Because their court cases, their monetary issues are in such numbers. And I was once at a din Torah in a Bezdin, and I observed a toyin. It was a Satmar guy, and he knew the Shulchan Aruch, the laws of Choshen Mishpat, cold. He knew them inside out. And this case was such a open and closed shut case. Someone owed someone money, he couldn't pay, and the issue was to work out a system to repay the money. Pretty simple, right? So he came up with arguments that and the person said, not only do you owe me the principal, you owe me the interest too, because they did a heter iska. So he proved that the heter iska was something called ribas kitzutza. You know what ribas kitzutza is? Ribas kitzutza means that when you arrange to have a certain amount of ribas pre the loan starting, it invalidates the ribas. I mean, these are complicated laws of Choshen Mishpat. So he proved that this case was a ribas kitzutza. And then the 3 dayanim, the 3 judges, the rabbinic judges, they told him that in a certain situation that he was presenting, it requires an oath, a shvuah. And the Gemara says that the last resort is to take a shvuah, because a Torah-sanctioned oath is very serious. It's like you're playing with God. You really are. It's the last thing you want to do. And I remember sitting there, and one of the judges turned to this toyin, and he said, "Are you ready to take an oath? If I administer an oath to you, will you take it?" And he said, "I'm ready to do it." And the judge said to him, "What? You're not scared to take an oath?" And he said, "No." So, seichel, so what I'm saying about a toyin, there is a time to have a toyin, halacha permits it. And a good seichel can use and make even a parnasa from it. This is what they do, these toyanim. They make a good living from going to dini toyers, being hired as toyanim, and they know their field, they know their subject matter. So I understand that, but at the end of the day, there's something beyond a toyin. It's called HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And, your logic maybe can prove what you're arguing, but are you ready to testify and promise and make a shvuah d'oraisa, a biblical oath, You know, there, if your answer is based on your logic, you're playing with fire. It's a very serious issue. You have to, you know, that's where, and again, that's where a person, the Tayin, has to ask himself, is my answer in accordance with halacha, and I really believe that? Or am I doing this because I got paid for the job and I have to protect my client? And in that case, it's not, you know, so there's the bittul. I'm just showing another example how seichel is a keli for Hashem if it's based on bittul, humility, and if not, it's not. Let's go back to the text. And that's what he says here. Yes.
Rabbi Dalfin.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm having a little hard time. How is the towing? Again, the example that you brought about the towing. How is that?
I brought an example from the Toain that there is an acceptance of seichel to support halacha. In other words, you are allowed to have a Toain to argue for you, to advocate your case. And a Toain is seichel. He's using his seichel to argue the case. Yes or no? Moshe?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
I'm just asking myself, but I wouldn't want necessarily towing, right, to start playing games advocating that I can go do an Avera.
Wait a minute. Who says it's an Avera? On the contrary. But listen for a second. This Toain was saying that the person who believes that he's owed the principal and the interest is wrong. He did an Aveda. He violated halacha by doing ribas ktsutza, set ribas, which is against halacha. That's what he proved. So what I'm saying to you is that good seichel could be used, is allowed to be used in a way that Torah allows. But that was one point I was making. In other words, what I'm saying is that we're not here to poo-poo seichel. We want the benefit of seichel, but yet we want the seichel with a bittul. And I was saying that in that case, that he was ready to swear, and the judge and the rabbi, the rav, the dayan said to him, you know, are you out of your mind? You're going to take a shvua. That to me, it felt like he was missing the bittul. The bittul was missing. In other words, the dayan was telling him, you shouldn't be doing this. Even though you're ready to do it, you shouldn't be doing it. And for whatever reason, he said otherwise. Now again, and then I added that, how do you know whether he's making the oath and it's holy or not? It depends on whether he's doing it because he's getting paid, or he really believes a violation of halacha was done by the plaintiff, and therefore he's presenting the case that it was not kosher what he did to begin with. So what I was trying to show in the example is that there's the two aspects to seichel, and not to think that, because some people say seichel is the biggest concealment of godliness. There is that position. We've actually learned it in Maamar. And that's true. On one hand, seichel blocks you from commitment. Seichel is powerful, but it also asks questions, challenges. What? What, Moshe?
Based on logic.
Logic.
Based on logic.
Yes. Logic. Everything is logical. And if it doesn't equal, I don't do it. I don't want to get involved. So on one hand, you could say, let me not go that course. Let me not go that way. So what I'm saying is that the Torah does want you to use your seichel. The Torah gives us examples when seichel is actually a good thing, and I gave the example of the Toyin. At the same time, I also said that you have to, what he says here in the Maamar, that when is he a proper intermediary between the Nefesh Elokis and Nefesh Abamis, that he can talk to both, when the Nefesh Elokis senses in seichel that the seichel is coming with a bittul, with a humility. If the seichel is coming with, I am the smartest, and I am the greatest, and I am the best, the nefesh elikis says, stay with your seichel. I don't want to have anything to do with you. But the nefesh elikis, and I saw it have my mashpia, Rabbi Yoel Khan. He's a genius. Literally, I mean, like a world's genius. I'm telling you, like say Lahavdil on Einstein, a genius. Okay, but his genius is so submerged, in my humble opinion, to his bittul for Hashem, and it's remarkable. It's remarkable to watch someone who's such a genius have such humility. Or Rabbi Moshe Feinstein was that way. Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, I just wrote about it in my book, was such a Talmud Chacham, the Pesach Ador, right? Everyone relied on his responses. Everyone. Mostly, not everybody. Right? And yet, he was so humble, and a boy can sit next to him, and he can sit and learn with you on the same bench, and the shtick, you know what I'm saying? The rabbi, the Rosh Hashiva, the Litvak goes into the store, and he's buying a new frock, and he's looking in the mirror to see if the frock is exactly fit good on him. And his wife says to him, Yankel, was guckst du so viel? Yankel, what are you looking so much in the mirror? He says, it's the cover of a Sefer Torah. You understand? He's the Sefer Torah, and then the Sefer Torah has a cover on it, so a Sefer Torah's cover has to be beautiful. Has to be exactly right. So he calls himself a Sefer Torah without saying I'm a Sefer Torah. He just says this is the cover of the Sefer Torah. You understand the point? That's not bittul. That's yesh. Okay? Sorry to say. And by the way, I take that back. It's not just the litvaks. It can be by a chassid too. So it can be by anyone. But you understand, seichel. The seichel, when you find a person who's a real Baal seichel, and he's so humble, it's so special, and it's a person that you really want to learn from and be with, because it's really reminiscent. It's this thing that we're learning here in Chasidus, in the Maamar, and it's not, because by most of us, if we're really strong in seichel, we lack humility, and if we have strong humility, we're not strong bali seichel. Think of people you know in your life. I believe you'll come to the same conclusion. When you find a person who has that combination, that's a gift. That's what we're learning here. What time? Is it 7:40? Is it already 1:45?
2:47.
Okay. Chevra, I'm sorry you started a little late today, but I think it was a very important discussion to really articulate this inyan, because this is a real issue daily. I'm telling you, this issue is daily in your own personal life, in your family life, your community life. How to balance Bahamis, Elokis, and Sichlis. If someone could write that up in a psychological way, I think that would be a great article, to write up the practicality, the psychological ramifications of this type of synthesis. Yes, Hillel.
I hear you, Rabbi.
Yes. I'm giving you homework, Hillel. Okay. Shalom, everyone. Take care.
All right, take care. All right.